Testing 1, 2, 3.
I made bend over again.
I know, because that's all.
The only thing is I haven't talked to you.
He's so tall, I know. I have the big deal. I'm still much shorter.
But I think when everything is good, I haven't even, yeah.
It was fine.
Some of this,
I didn't really think about it. Think about doing it for this one.
April has been one of the kids. Yeah. Yesterday.
Well, I don't know if I'm kicking this bus on the bike. I haven't been on a bike since last.
Now.
Hi, Commissioner Knoxler, how are you?
I'll be down.
Oh,
Oh,
God.
hey, here's our, you look very nice and springy, and I know where that skirt is from. I have a good idea where the jacket's from.
The whole thing.
The whole thing, okay.
It's not a good price, but it's not really expensive.
No.
It's for the extra.
Oh,
I mean, it's only what is already available. I
right.
don't think any of us object to it. But
No.
I have.
No, thank you for bringing, because I didn't see it,
So
no.
I'm just going to say that we're trying to stipulate. All right.
No problem.
But I wasn't sure if it's.
Okay, I'm not going to put Dave up on the stand. You know, he has submission, wants to hear from him. I'm just going to make an argument. Okay. Okay. And I don't have any cross.
Yeah.
No, not even. No, we already gave him a hard time. He was the first one here. And so Gloria came in and Ronette and me, and then Andrea, we were talking about this. And he's like, I'm gonna leave for a bit, right? He comes back in, he goes, are you still talking about it? We said, yeah. And he's like, ah. And then Dave came in. And Dave says, they have a half price happy hour, call us in, and Glenn says, and the Phillies are playing the Mets tonight.
Oh my God.
He's like, oh my God, I gotta get out of here. And we said to him, Glenn, you actually should listen, you know? And he says, my wife's working out. I haven't heard any of this yet.
Well, you might want to prepare yourself.
Yes, that is so great. I think, did you get that last year? Yeah. Okay, because I got the dress.
Yes.
So, and I think I should have got a good jacket. Because I don't really have anything to go with the dress, but I need something. Because it's cold.
Exactly.
So,
I do that a lot too, because they're always wonderful.
Yeah.
Sir, how are you?
I think I was just doing that.
Well, as you know, I'm up in the family.
I've been trying to avoid so I've never started.
I know, I am too. Even though I've given up on losing weight, I don't think it's going to happen. So,
Battle after
well,
no matter what you do, no matter what you do.
And, well, you know, so I was like, you know what? It's not worth it. Life is too short. Yeah. I mean, I miss it. Really miss it.
I know. Totally relate to that. As you know. Hey, Dad.
That was, I was just looking at some of that.
Hello, how are you doing?
All the big systems.
Steve, tell about a little extra elaborate.
Hey, Bob.
All the small ones come online. Like, you have nothing actually. And then like I'm like very last one.
Oh, thank you. I actually ran it out, but thank you. That's him.
Haven't been discussed by yeah, I don't think they can do it. So I'll talk to them, especially like, I left.
I said, well, I just wanted to stay behind.
No, I need to take it in the water. I didn't want to know. Right?
The IRP, I'm not going to sit down. Jeff, yes, yeah, we did.
That's what I'm like. So I always have a jacket.
abstentions, the motion carries. April 6, 2017, meeting minutes, any changes or corrections?
I move for adoption of the minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Consent agenda. There are 3 items on the consent agenda. Any commissioner have any questions or want any of them pulled off the list, or does it seem like it's good to go?
Move that we adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
Any discussion on the motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carried. Regular agenda, on the matter of the application of Artesian Water Company for CPCN. Welcome, Artesian.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Scott Steffen for Artesian Water Company. Today I'm here because Artesian has a CPCN application that required expedited treatment. I'll provide some of the facts for you. On February 23rd, Artesian signed an asset purchase agreement with the Fort DuPont Redevelopment and Preservation Corporation. The terms of that agreement called for Artesian to acquire the existing water assets at Fort DuPont. The plan is Artesian is going to take over those assets, upgrade where needed, and be able to provide water service to accommodate the future growth that's expected in that area. As part of the agreement, Artesian needed to get all the regulatory approvals, including the CPCN rights. Per the terms of the asset purchase agreement, closing had to happen within 90 days or the agreement became null and void. With that short time frame, Artesian is requesting a waiver on the time requirements for this application. The application only applies to parcels held by Fort DuPont. In support of this request, Fort DuPont has also submitted a letter with the application asking for a waiver of the time requirements. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions, Commissioners? Mr. Willard, is it you?
Again, this Delaware City abandoned in the hearing we just had for the consent agenda, and Artesian is picking that up. Staff has no problem with granting the waiver because the party involved all knew what was coming, public notice, et cetera. There were no problems submitting the plan. So staff recommends approval of the waiver.
Thank you, Mr. Willard. Ms. Ivory?
Thank you, Chairman. The party advocate takes that position.
Commissioners, any questions?
One question.
Mr. Chairman, in this order 9052, is the approval of the waiver memorialized? Can anyone tell me? It may be sufficient just to have it in the record, but I'm just checking. Okay, very good. Okay, thank you. No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Motion, please.
Mr. Chair, I move that the Commission adopt order number 9052 as submitted.
I second it.
Any discussion on the motion to approve the order? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Next, we have the hearing schedule. In the matter of the application of Delaware Power and Light Company for approval of modification to its gas cost rates. Welcome, Ms. Scott.
Thank you, Chair Winslow. Good afternoon. Pam Scott here on behalf of Delmarva Power. In connection with the annual gas cost rate application. In connection with this particular application, the parties have reached a settlement, and therefore we will each be presenting a witness to support the settlement that has been reached. Preliminarily, if I may approach Chair Winslow.
Yes, please.
Exhibit log for this. Thank you. The exhibit log represents the pre-filed application and testimony in connection with this particular application, as well as the affidavits of publication and the settlement agreement. And the parties stipulate to the admission of these documents into evidence in connection with this particular application.
And the exhibits are therefore entered without objection.
So at this time, I have with me a witness on behalf of Delmarva Power that I would like to be called Jim Jacoby, and I would ask that he be sworn.
Sir, please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Could you state your full name for the record and spell your last name, please?
My name is James B. Jacoby, Jacoby.
And by whom are you employed?
I'm an employee of Pepco Holdings, Inc., and my title is Manager of Gas Supply and Transportation in our Energy Acquisition Group.
And how long have you held that position?
Approximately 8 years,
And how long have you been employed by Pepco Holdings?
28 years, including my time at Delmarva.
What are your duties and responsibilities in your current position?
Primarily, I'm responsible for overseeing the purchase of physical gas commodity for the GCR, executing the financial hedging, and negotiating and managing pipeline and storage contracts for the GCR assets, and overseeing system planning.
And in connection with the proposed settlement of this particular docket, were you involved in the filing of the application, the preparation of testimony, and the discussions that resulted in a settlement?
Yes.
And did you prepare testimony for this particular application?
Yes.
And did you review the testimony of the other witnesses that filed in connection with this particular application?
Yes.
Do you have any changes to your testimony or that of any of the other witnesses?
No.
Do you adopt your testimony and that of the other witnesses at this time?
Yes.
Can you outline for the commission the specific terms of the settlement agreement that was reached with the parties?
Yes. First of all, parties agreed to implement rates as filed, which will result in an increase in rates for customers. Customers under the RG, RSH, GL, and non-electing MVG will experience a 14% increase in the level of the GCR. The effect on a residential space heating customer using approximately 120 CCF in a winter month would see an increase of $6.63, or approximately 5.8% of the total bill. For customers served under classification GG, they will experience an increase in their bill in the range of 2.5 to 7.6%. Customers served under the service classification of MVG will experience increases in the range of 6.8 to 10.4. Secondly, Delmarva agrees to continue its quarterly hedge meetings with staff and DPA to discuss the status of the natural gas hedging program. In addition, Delmarva agrees that until the Commission issues an order rendering a finding in the 1718 GCR application for purposes of determining whether there's sufficient natural gas supply and transmission capability to permit the non-core or transportation service customers to return to sales service, the company's, if the company's projected reserve margin is less than 2%, it would constitute a finding that inadequate reserve is available to permit that return. Finally, Delmarva agreed that the Commission, until the Commission issues an order in the 1718 application, the company will not enter into any new precedent agreements for additional long-term upstream pipeline capacity unless agreed by staff and DPA. The decision-making process for future increases in adding pipeline capacity will also include solicitation and evaluation of Citygate delivered peaking service as part of the evaluation.
So do those provisions that you just discussed summarize the main sections of the settlement agreement that was executed by the parties
Yes,
and contained in this document, correct?
yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am.
This is the settlement agreement that was just discussed. So in your opinion, Mr. Jacoby, does the settlement agreement that was reached by the parties provide for just and reasonable rates, and is it in the public interest?
Yes.
And why is that?
Because entering into a settlement will avoid the costs and use of resources associated with litigation, and will also allow us to amicably resolve the several issues that were mutually identified.
I have no further questions for Mr. Jacoby. He is available for cross-examination or questions from the
Any
commission.
commissioners have any questions of Mr. Jacoby?
Yes,
Mr. Gray?
yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. Mr. Jacoby, could you help me a little bit with this paragraph 10? I've probably read it 5 times, but in layperson's terms, could you explain briefly what that means?
Which paragraph
This
again?
is the capacity reserve margin.
The capacity reserve margin is best described as the ability of the company's assets to deliver gas on the coldest day that we plan for. So a 100% reserve margin means we can exactly meet that need. So a reserve margin deficiency of less than 2% means that we're currently at 102% of that coldest day design. And if we have a transportation customer, let's just use a large, just say there was a large automaker opened up a new shop and they had 10,000 decatherms a day of demand. If they wanted to return to service, or they wanted to return to service, that would cause our reserve margin to drop below that 100% and put our GCR potentially at risk.
Okay, I got you.
Okay.
I got it. And one last question I have. When I note that these increases are plus 14%, I kind of put that in the back of my mind with what gas prices have looked like in recent months, in the past year. Help me understand a little bit why the 14% increase in view of that background.
It's an excellent question, and the answer is it resides in timing. The commodity component of the GCR is almost unchanged from last year. So those costs are, if you compare last year to this year, almost the same. The demand component is also almost exactly the same. The difference is we had a large over recovery 2 years ago and a under recovery this year. So the combination of those two factors created about a 50-cent swing in the GCR. We saw the rate go from $3.99 to into the $4 range up. So all of the increase is attributable to over and under recoveries from prior periods.
No further questions. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. O'Leary, any questions of Mr. Jacoby?
No question.
Mr. Willard?
No question.
Ms. Scott, you passed me this nice settlement document that looks like it's the original. Do you want this marked as an exhibit in place with the secretary?
Yes, that would be fine, Your Honor.
Okay,
Thank
so that would be the next numbered exhibit. And
you. It's on the exhibit log, as I
Already?
believe the last exhibit number 11.
Okay.
But we just gathered all the signatures, so I wanted to make sure you had a fully
Well,
signed.
let's use the original one that appears to be, and so that the secretary can have that as part of the record. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Mr. Willard?
Yes, Your Honor, again, as she said, the rate increase comes out, or as the witness said, $6.63 per month per year, the average customer. Again, the order 8942 is subject to refund if certain things happen, and parties did conduct discovery and met several times, and they did reach this agreement. And we do have testimony to be presented by Ms. Melissa Davis. I can call her now.
Yes, sir.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, for the record, could you please give your name and business address?
My name is Malika Davis, MalikaDavis, and my business address is 861 Boulevard, Suite 100, Dover, Delaware, 19940.
And by whom are you employed?
The Delaware Public Service Commission.
And what is your position there?
I'm a public utility analyst.
Okay, in connection with your employment, have you performed certain reviews and investigations in this particular document?
Yes.
And as part of your duties and responsibilities, did you, back in January 20th, 2017, file testimony on behalf of the commission staff in this docket?
Yes.
Again, your testimony has been pre-marked, I believe, as Exhibit 8.
Yes.
Okay. And, yes, you recognize that?
Yes.
And this is the testimony you file on behalf of the commission staff, and you prepare that yourself?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any changes or modifications or corrections to your testimony?
No.
All right. If I were to ask you the same questions that were asked in this, would your answers today be the same?
Yes.
Do you adopt the pre-filed testimony marked as Exhibit 8 as your testimony for this hearing today?
Yes, I do.
Staff moves the admission of Exhibit 8 into the record. It's already been admitted.
In that case, it's admitted again.
Did staff retain any experts for this docket?
Yes, we did.
And what's the name?
We retained Jerome Mearsware of Exeter Associates.
And are you familiar with his testimony, which was filed on January 20th?
I am.
Do you have any changes to that testimony?
I do not.
Do you adopt his testimony as your testimony today?
Yes.
Again, Exhibit 9 has already been admitted into the record. Exhibit 9 being that testimony. Were you involved in negotiations on behalf of commission staff that led to this settlement agreement?
Yes, I was.
And do you believe the proposed settlement results in just and reasonable rates and is in the public interest?
Yes.
And could you explain why you feel that way?
Staff recommends that these rates, the proposed rates, in the company's application be approved as final by the commission because we reviewed the application and the supporting documentation. Staff found that the proposed GCR rates were just and reasonable and that they were calculated correctly in accordance with the company's tariff. Additionally, the settlement incorporates the suggestions made by staff and DPA's consultant regarding the capacity reserve margin and the additional upstream pipeline capacity. We believe these provisions protect GCR customers from paying costs related to transportation customers.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Ms. Davis is now available for cross-examination.
Ms. Scott?
No cross here.
Ms. Iori?
No problem.
Anything further, Mr. Willard?
No, that's it, Your Honor. We recommend approval of Order 9050, Order 8942.
Ms. Iori?
Thank you. The DPA calls Andrea Mouser to the stand and asks that she be sworn.
Swear that the testimony you're about to give should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Ms. Mouser, would you please state your name and business address for the record?
It's Andrea Moucher, 29 South State Street, Dover, Delaware, 19901.
And by whom are you employed?
The Delaware Division of the Public Advocate.
What is your position with the DPA?
I'm a public utilities analyst.
And what are your duties and responsibilities in that position?
Primarily, I act as case manager for all dockets opened by the Public Service Commission and in which the DPA has intervened. In that role, I'm responsible for review and analysis of utility filings and discovery, retention and supervision of expert witnesses, and participation in the development of positions taken by the public advocate.
And as part of those duties and responsibilities, did you review the application of Delaware Power and Light Company for a change in its GCR rates?
Yes.
Did the public advocate participate in retaining Jerome Mierswa of Exeter Associates to review the application on behalf of staff and the public advocate?
Yes.
Did you review Mr. Mierswa's testimony before it was filed?
Yes.
And have you reviewed it since it was filed?
Yes, I reviewed it in preparation for this hearing.
Do you have any changes or corrections to make to that testimony at this time?
No, I do not.
Do you adopt that testimony on your own as on behalf of the public advocate?
Yes, I do.
And you are aware that the parties have reached a settlement in this case?
Yes.
Do you believe that the proposed settlement results in just and reasonable rates for residential and small commercial customers and is in the public interest?
Yes, I do.
Why do you believe that?
First, the settlement recommends approval of Delmarva's proposed GCR rates. The GCR is a pass-through of the natural gas commodity costs Delmarva incurs to provide service to its customers. The calculations are either correct or they're not. In this case, the rates have been calculated correctly and in accordance with the company's tariff. Second, provisions included in the settlement agreement approved by the Commission in docket number 151355 that were to expire have been extended for an additional year. These provisions address the acquisition of additional interstate pipeline capacity by Delmarva and the company's capacity reserve margin. Finally, the proposed settlement agreement in this case continues the quarterly hedge calls, which the DPA finds to be a valuable source of information. In conclusion, I believe that the proposed settlement agreement in this case results in just and reasonable rates for residential and small commercial customers and adequately resolves the concerns raised by the parties. Since it's unlikely the Commission would reach a substantially different decision, additional litigation in this matter would be a waste of time, effort, and dollars that would ultimately be paid by customers. For these reasons, I urge the Commission to approve the proposed settlement agreement.
Ms. Boucher is available for cross-examination and questions from the Commissioners.
Ms. Scott?
No cross, Your Honor.
Mr. Willard?
No problem.
Commissioners, any questions of anyone? Is there anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Nothing? Okay. Any commissioners have any questions?
I do have one question, and for Ms. Scott, just for clarification, the approximately $663 per month for the winter months, that's, are the winter months considered December, January, February?
November through March.
Or the actual?
November through March.
Okay. And that is projected to take place starting in November of 2017, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. That's all.
Okay, thank you. I think we're in a position now, a motion will be appropriate.
Move that we adopt the proposed settlement agreement as presented.
Second.
Seconded.
Is there any discussion on the motion to approve the settlement agreement? I would just say thank you to everyone. It seemed like a very professional job, and I appreciate all your efforts. Any further comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you. The number 2 item is Ms. Scott again, and that's the application of Delmarva Power and Light for approval of its 2017 program for the procurement of solar renewable energy credits. I assume that Ms. Scott's going
Yes, Your Honor.
to light this up, so to speak.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. We are here today in connection with the 2017 SREC procurement program application, which was filed by Delmarva Power based upon the recommendation and approval of the Renewable Energy Task Force. The application itself included a program outline for the 2017 program, a form of the SREC transfer agreement showing the proposed changes from the prior year, as well as Delmarva's supplemental report, which addressed these specific changes in the program from 2016 to 2017. Notice of the filing of this application was published in the Delaware State News and the News Journal on April 1st, and affidavits of publication were subsequently filed with the Public Service Commission. As with the prior docket, preliminarily, we do have an exhibit log in this particular matter that presents the application, the affidavits of publication, and the comments that have been received by the Commission in connection with this application. I'd like to present that to Your Honor.
Thank you very much, Ms. Scott. Why don't we
We have it. Oh, you've got it?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, let's, no, it should all be the same. And again, with respect to the documents on the exhibit log, the parties do agree that these documents, do stipulate that these documents should be submitted into the record and accepted for evidential purposes.
Exhibits 1 through 6 are hereby admitted.
At this time, I'd like to call Glenn Moore as the witness on behalf of Delmarva Power and ask that he be sworn.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Could you state your full name for the record, please?
Glenn A. Moore,
And by whom are you employed?
Delmarva Power.
And what is it that you do for Delmarva Power?
So I'm the Regional Vice President for the Newcastle region.
And what does that entail?
So I'm responsible for all government affairs activity in our Newcastle region, which is Newcastle County, Delaware, Cecil, and Hartford County, Maryland.
And how long have you held that position?
That position, 12 years.
And how long have you been with the company?
32 wonderful years.
As part of your duties and responsibilities, do you serve as Delmarva Power's representative on the Renewable Energy Task Force?
Yes, I do.
And briefly, what is the purpose and role of the Renewable Energy Task Force?
The task force was established by law to make recommendations about the SREC procurement programs.
Did you participate as Delmarva's representative in the meetings of the task force that resulted in the development of the program that we are here for today?
Yes, I did.
Was a vote taken by the task force in connection with the application?
Yes, it was.
Was the vote unanimous?
It was both unanimous with no abstentions.
So before we get into the specifics of the 2017 program, could you give us a very brief summary of the what occurred in connection with the 2016 program?
Sure. The 2016 auction was very well subscribed, with the only tier undersubscribed being the smallest tier, the residential tier. The overall weighted price that Delmarva will pay for the next 10 years is $66.56. That is a reduction of 15% from the previous years, which was $78.78. Last time I gave an overview of New Jersey, who also has long-term contracts. Their long-term contracts for 2016 are priced at about $225.
And when did Delmarva file this particular application?
March 24th of 17.
Can you describe for the commission what has changed between the 2016 program and the 2017 program?
I certainly can. So first and foremost, at the commission meeting last time, the commissioners had some requests of the task force to consider, and we considered those items, and they were as follows. One is controlling costs for the consumers, and you can tell that by some of the actions we've taken, the cost has reduced. Allowing utility scale participation, which I'll talk about in a second. Making sure that Tier 2, which is a small commercial tier, prices were held in check, and actually they were lower, significantly lower than prior years. And third is making sure that residential leasing programs are available into the project, and they certainly are. For the 2017 auction, a couple changes have been made. The most significant change that's been made is we have created a new tier. That's our Tier 4. That allows utility scale to bid into the auction. Utility scale is a system of greater than 2 megawatts. Prior to that, utility scale could not bid into the auction. What we do is we take 10,000 RECs and we push them across the first three tiers, the small residential, the small commercial, and then the large commercial and residential. In addition to that, we've created the Tier 4, which is 10,000 additional RECs that the utility scale can bid into. Those are by the discretion of the company. The company has discretion to eliminate any RECs that we believe are too high. So the way this works is the first 10,000 RECs are given to those tiers as what the legislation wanted. If a tier is undersubscribed, it can be filled by any other tier, including the utility scale. If a tier is fully subscribed, the utility scale can only bid in on the final 10,000. Finally, last year, Delmarva put 15,000 RECs onto the table to be bought. This year, we're requesting 20,000, 10 for the small three tiers and then an additional 10 under the discretion of Delmarva Power under price for the larger tier, totaling 20,000 recs.
Otherwise, the provisions of the program are remaining the same, is that correct?
That's correct. So a company bids in a price for the first 10 years. The back prices are fixed to $35 with the exception of the utility scale. There is hope and assumption, and I think everybody on the task force is looking forward to see just how low the prices are from the utility scale. And you can understand if the utility scale bids in less than $35 in the first 10 years, their final 10 years are the same price. They don't get the $35. So that's the only distinction on the back end for the larger utility scale.
And did you review the comments that were filed by the public advocate in this application?
Yes, I did.
And did you have any comments in response to those comments?
So I think all parties continue to make suggestions and recommendations of what the task force should look forward to. I think there were 5, if I'm not mistaken. 3 of those items have had already significant input by the task force and will be on the agenda as we move forward. Probably the most significant, in my opinion, is how do we handle the residential class? Do we do some buying recs up front? And that's a serious issue. There's a lot of consequences to it, but we're looking at it. There are 2 relatively new items that certainly we will put on the agenda as we meet our next time.
Do you have any other comments to offer in connection with the application?
No, I do not.
Mr. Moore is available for cross-examination.
Mr. Willard?
No questions, Your Honor.
No questions.
Okay, Mr. Willard?
Again, staff supports this. Notice that pricing has remained fairly constant, and we do have a witness, Joseph DeLosa, to explain about this, if he can be called.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, Mr. DeLosa, for the record, could you give your full name and your business address?
Of course. My name is Joseph DeLosa, DeLosa. My business address is here, 861 Silver Lake Boulevard, Cannon Building, Suite 100, Dover, Delaware, 19904.
Okay. And who's your employer and what is your position there?
I'm employed by the Delaware Public Service Commission as a public utilities analyst.
And as part of your duties with the commission, are you familiar with the documents that have been filed in this docket?
Yes, I have reviewed the application in conjunction with my supervisor, Pam Knotts.
Can you briefly describe the background of this docket?
Yes, so this docket is a continuation of the 2012 pilot program, 2013, 2014, 15, and 16 procurement programs, which have all been previously approved by the Commission. The 2017 program is based on the recommendations, as Mr. Moore stated, of the Renewable Energy Task Force and requires that Delmarva acquire at least 10,000 SRECs from certain tiers and allows the purchase of up to 20,000 SRECs. This program has been developed to ensure compliance with Delmarva's statutory obligation under the Renewable Energy Portfolio Standards Act.
And could you describe the nature of your review of the procurement program?
Yeah, I reviewed the application and noted the changes that were made from the prior year's program.
And can you identify those changes from 2016's program?
Sure. As Mr. Moore did, I'll note the 2 changes to this year's program. The first is increasing the number of SRECs that may be procured in the long-term auction from 15,000 total last year to 20,000 total this year, and the addition of 2 tiers, N4 for new systems over 2 megawatts and E4 for existing systems over 2 megawatts, which, as Mr. Moore stated, were previously not allowed in the auction.
All right. Can you summarize those changes that you've identified?
Sure. As I noted, last year's program authorized up to 15,000 SRECs. This year's program authorizes up to 20,000 SRECs. That is as a result that the Renewable Portfolio Standard Act requires 1.5% of electrical energy sales to be derived from solar photovoltaics for compliance year 2017, for which this auction will be fulfilling, up from 1.25% in compliance year 2016. After the initial 10,000 SRECs are procured from the different size tiers, Delmarva may procure up to 10,000 additional SRECs from new or existing systems, which will provide Delmarva flexibility to purchase SRECs with low-priced offers. The second change, as I mentioned, are the addition of the new utility scale tier sizes.
Did you get any comments from the public concerning this docket?
Yes, the only comment we received was from the DPA.
And do you support the recommendations of the DPA?
So in their comments, the DPA raised 5 issues. So 3 of the issues that the DPA discussed, as Mr. Moore cited, are currently under consideration by the Renewable Energy Task Force. These are upfront SREC purchasing for residential customers, so-called virtual SRECs, and changing the guaranteed minimum price. 2 of these issues are brand new and have not been discussed as yet in the task force. These 2 issues are changing the monthly payment obligation and limiting payments if RPS freeze is instituted. Staff's recommendation is that the Commission take no action on any of these issues. As noted in the staff memo, during previous Commission deliberations, the Commission noted that there should be almost a general rule that there ought to be a compelling reason for the Commission to intervene and come up with something new if a proposal has not first been presented to the task force. Commission staff have been present at each of the task force meetings and would note that of the issues that the DPA has raised in these comments, those that have come before the task force have received thoughtful consideration, which continues to move forward, as Mr. Moore noted. Staff would reiterate the Commission's guidance from 2014 as applied to these 2 new issues. The DPA can bring these issues before the task force for robust evaluation of discussion among various stakeholders. These issues would have been ripe for discussion during task force deliberations on the 2017 program. Specifically, as far as issues where the DPA's recommendation is to continue the discussion, staff would support the DPA. Staff also supports the DPA's recommendations to, quote, commence discussion within the Renewable Energy Task Force depending on the results of the 2017 auction, which they recommend for their 4th issue, which is changing the monthly payment obligations. On the 3rd issue, it's unclear what exactly the DPA's recommendation is at this time. However, staff would support continued discussion of this issue by the task force and would note, as the DPA has in their comments, that the task force is already progressing on this issue by implementing this provision for larger systems, as Mr. Moore noted, where a potentially lower SREC price would carry through the whole 20-year term of the agreement. Regarding the remaining 2 issues, as far as the DPA is proposing to alter the form of the program today, staff would oppose the suggested changes. Specifically, staff reads DPA's comment as requesting the Commission take action today on 2 issues that have not been recommended in the 2017 program, which, as Mr. Moore noted, was unanimously supported by the task force. The first of these issues is that the DPA recommends implementing a program to pre-buy SRECs. And second, the DPA believes that the contracts awarded to winning bidders should contain a provision that payments may be stopped if a freeze of the solar renewable energy requirements is declared. Due to the fact that these issues have not been fully vetted or recommended at this time by the task force, it is my recommendation that the Commission take no action on these issues today, but instead refer the DPA to discuss these issues at the task force level. Staff continues to work with the DPA and any other task force member in the robust stakeholder evaluation and consideration of proposals as envisioned by the statute.
Did the Renewable Energy Task Force approve the 2017 SREC procurement program proposed by Delmarva that's under consideration today?
Yes, the program was approved unanimously and without abstention on December 13th, 2016.
And do you recommend approval of the of this program application?
Yes, I recommend that the application be approved as submitted for the following reasons. The 2017 SREC procurement program application was approved by the Renewable Energy Task Force in a thoroughly vetted process that included extensive opportunities for public comment. The program was also heavily based on 2016 programs and past SREC procurement programs that the Commission has found to be in the public interest. And Delmarva must continue to meet their REPSA requirement under Delaware law.
I have no further questions. Mr. Delos is available to respond to any questions or cross-examination.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Ms. Scott, any questions?
No cross, Your Honor.
Ms. Lori?
No question.
Ms. Lori?
Thank you, Chair Winslow. The public advocate is not going to call Mr. Stevenson to testify. However, he is here if the Commission or any of the parties have any questions about what I am going to say to you now. You've heard a lot about what the DPA wants from Delmarva's witness and staff witness, but what you haven't heard is why the DPA wants it. The Public Advocate did vote in favor of submitting the 2017 procurement program to the Commission for approval. And we did so because of the concessions that the task force made in this procurement as a result of the Commission's order number 8890 in the last procurement docket, which was number 15-1472, primarily allowing utility scale systems to bid. The EPA was and is very appreciative of the Commission's strong encouragement to the task force to address the issues that the EPA raised, which included controlling costs for customers. The EPA and Cesar Rodney Institute have advocated this for years, but it wasn't until the Commission directed the task force last year to consider the EPA's cost controlling suggestions that we think the task force really took it seriously. So we submitted comments in this docket because we do think that there are some matters that we would like to bring to the Commission's attention and that we would like to ask the Commission to include in its final order in this docket. Mr. Moore did say that the task force was considering them and would consider them, but Delmarva isn't the only member of the task force, so we think it's important that the Commission order include a directive that the task force do consider these matters. Two of the matters have been discussed at the task force level since at least 2014, and both would further control costs for Delmarva ratepayers. Those two matters are purchasing SRECs up front rather than conducting an auction, and the concept of virtual SRECs. In the 2014 proceeding, the SEU was about to launch a pre-buying program using RGGI money to pay for it, and apparently that program was very successful. Solar owners sold approximately 80% of their SRECs to the SEU, while only 20% of the SRECs were offered in the auction. Unfortunately, the SEU has since discontinued its pre-buy program. But the pre-buy program offers the potential to reduce administrative costs further, which, as we know, ratepayers pay for. In this regard, we note that Delmarva hasn't done any study to ascertain whether it costs more to have the SEU or Incline manage the SRECs, despite the Commission's caution that it shouldn't cost ratepayers any more to use the SEU than it would cost if Delmarva did this in-house. The EPA would ask the Commission to include in its final order in this docket a requirement that such a comparison be included in the next procurement program application. But getting back to the pre-buy program, it may also reduce the average SREC price, which ratepayers also pay for. Based on the SEU program experience, solar owners appear to be willing to accept a discount to receive their funds at once rather than over 20 years. Our consultant's analysis shows that owners in the pre-buy program settled at a net present SREC value of $18.14 compared to the net present value auction price of $47.40. At $20,000 SRECs, that difference represents an almost $600,000 saving to Delmarva ratepayers. And in purchasing the SRECs out of GEF grants, the savings for Delmarva ratepayers rises to almost $1 million for each auction. The second issue is virtual SRECs, which again, since at least the 2014 procurement docket, the task force has been discussing. The DPA asked the Commission to encourage the task force to implement a virtual SREC program. Such a program would potentially reduce administrative costs because there would be no need to keep track of the SRECs provided every year. Production would be monitored during the first year to establish a baseline, and thereafter, production would be assumed to occur at a slightly reduced rate over time as the system ages. There is available data from which the rate at which production declines can be estimated. The pre-buy program and virtual SRECs are a win-win for everyone. Potential system owners want it, solar installers have expressed support for it, and the changes will bring prices down for Delmarva ratepayers. 95% of auction bids are from systems smaller than 25 kW. If those bids are moved to a pre-buy program, the remaining larger system bids, which there have been from 20 to 40 a year, could be handled via an RFP process directly by Delmarva, as it does for wind contracts. The cost of an auction would be eliminated, and therefore so would the outside administrative costs. This would also eliminate all the time that the Commission and interested parties spend every year dealing with the SREC auction. The task force's job is to ensure that the goals of REPSA are being met, and those goals are to establish a market for electricity from renewable energy resources and to reduce the cost to consumers of electricity from those resources. Auctions are not the only way to accomplish these goals. Next, the EPA asked the Commission to encourage the task force to consider changing the $35 guaranteed minimum price for SRECs in the last 10 years of the contract for tiers N1, N2, N3, E1, and E2 to the lower of bid price or $35 per SREC, depending on the results of this auction. This is already being done for larger systems. Doing the same thing for smaller systems will save money that can be used to procure additional SRECs. The DPA has also asked the Commission to direct the task force to consider two new issues. First, we ask that the Commission direct the task force to consider payment options longer than monthly for smaller systems, which would also reduce administrative costs. Monthly payments made sense when SRECs cost $200 up to $300, but it really doesn't make sense when SRECs are $35 or less. Obviously, the administrative costs represent a larger percentage of a $35 SREC than they do of a $200 or $300 SREC. It is less cost-effective to provide monthly payments on $35 SRECs. It may not even be cost-effective at all. Last, DPA asks the Commission to consider amending the SREC contract or transfer agreement to provide that payments may be stopped if the freeze of the solar renewable energy resource requirements is declared and that payments will not resume until the freeze is lifted. As you know, the Commission staff has promulgated proposed regulations regarding the statutory cost caps. The DPA and others have submitted comments regarding those proposed regulations, and the deadline for comments is April 24th, just a few days from now. We don't know how long it will take for staff to go through the comments and determine whether it will change the proposed regulations based on the comments received or whether it will not. I note that as of yesterday, most of the comments were short email communications, most urging the Commission to include bloom fuel cell costs in the calculation of REPSA compliance costs. But it is likely that any new regulations will become effective during compliance year 2017, which begins June 1, 2017, and continues through May 31st, 2018. In the event of a freeze, it makes no sense for Delmarva to keep paying for SRECs that it need not purchase until a freeze is lifted. Nor would that affect the legislative intent of providing for a freeze in the first place. This is a matter that the Commission can consider now. It has nothing to do with auction procedures or changing the manner in which SRECs are procured, matters that this Commission has said that it wants the task force to discuss first. Rather, it is simply stating what may be statutorily required if there is a freeze. Payments may be suspended until the freeze is lifted, and all we are asking is that contracts include a provision to that effect. That way, winning bidders are on notice that in the event of a freeze, their payments may be suspended for some time. Isn't it better that winning bidders be made aware of that possibility before they bid, rather than after they bid and their bid has been selected? The DPA appreciates the Commission's consideration of its comments, and again, thanks the Commission for acknowledging the validity of the DPA's concern for controlling the costs of SREC procurement for Delmarva ratepayers. Mr. Stevenson is available to answer any specific questions that the Commission might have, or if the parties have any questions for him.
Thank you, Ms. Emery. Ms. Scott?
I don't have any questions for the DPA or for Mr. Stevenson, but I do have a couple comments, if I may.
I assume Mr. Ward has no questions?
No questions.
You're going to present some more evidence?
I just have a few comments I'd like to submit. It can be at the end of the process, but no questions for Ms. Emery.
Are we going to hear a response to what Ms. Iowa's just suggested?
Yes.
Changes?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Please proceed.
I just wanted to make comments on 2 points that were raised by the public advocate. The first had to do with evaluating the cost of the running of the auction through the SEU and Incline. That is reviewed annually by the Commission and approved as part of the review of the RPS costs that we make the filing annually, and as part of that filing, There is a review of the costs associated with the administration of the program by the SEU and Incline versus what it would cost for Delmarva to handle that internally. So that is already being done as part of a current process that has been in place for some time now. Secondly, with respect to the proposal to amend the SREC transfer agreement to include language around a freeze, first of all, you don't even have final regulations in place that would even determine when or if or how a freeze would be implemented. But beyond that, it is extremely disruptive to a contractual process to include a regulatory out, because what's going to happen is you are going to have people that will likely refuse to bid or totally change what their bid may be to cover the eventuality that the contract could be terminated at some time into the future. We would be very concerned about doing that, and especially considering that without having input from the Renewable Energy Task Force, because I think there are many other consequences to doing that other than just what I have stated here today. And I think we should have the benefit of the wisdom of the task force members as to what other consequences may occur as a result of such action. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we should have the benefit of DENREC, too, with respect to this issue. Please.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is William Kassab. I'm a Deputy Attorney General representing DENREC, and I have with me Mr. Thomas Noyes, who is prepared to offer testimony on DENREC's behalf. You may be sworn in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name and place of work for the record.
I'm Thomas Noyes, Principal Planner for Utility Policy at the DENREC Division of Energy and Climate, located at 100 West Water Street, Dover, Delaware.
And Mr. Noyes, what are your duties at the Division of Energy and Climate?
I'm responsible for developing and implementing policies to promote clean energy. I serve as staff to the Renewable Energy Task Force and represent DENREC before this commission.
What is the purpose of your testimony today?
I will describe the work of the task force in developing this proposal, as well as some of the economic and policy issues involved in this procurement program.
Can you describe the role of the Renewable Energy Task Force in developing the 2017 SREC program?
Yes, the task force was established by the Renewable Energy Portfolio Standards Act, REPSA. The task force met 3 times after the 2016 auction to review the results and design the next procurement. This program recommended by the task force reflects a consensus of stakeholders. We included considerations that the Commission raised in order number 8890, and as you've heard, the result was a unanimous vote by members of the task force.
What RESPA requirements did the task force consider?
The statutory charge to the task force is found in Title 26, Section 360, includes creating balanced market mechanisms, minimizing cost, establishing revenue certainty, maximizing in-state renewable generation, and ensuring that the residential, commercial, and utility scale solar systems of various sizes are financially viable. We have developed a balanced portfolio approach that allows for the stability of long-term contracts along with the market benefits of spot purchases and short-term contracts. This balanced portfolio approach that Delmarva has adopted has promoted market stability and steady growth of solar power in Delaware.
The Commission asked the task force to consider several issues in this order number 8890. How did the task force address those issues?
I will just simply echo the testimony from Delmarva and staff that we went through each of those issues and just point out that we work from a straw man proposal, which identifies all of the issues that go into the design of the auction. And right off the bat, we had the Commission's 4 issues there on the straw man, and would add that we do this so that we can consider each issue in the context of the overall design of the auction. And we do not move to a vote until we have
thoroughly discussed each of the issues identified in the strawman proposal.
Have you read the comments submitted by the DPA?
Yes, and I would say that the DPA graciously acknowledged the work of the task force in responding to its issues and the commissions and developing the current proposal. As you've heard, 3 issues have already been discussed previously by the task force in this year and the previous years. Those are upfront SREC payments, virtual or estimated SRECs, the question of the fixed SREC price in the later 10 years of the contract. 2 issues raised by the public advocate have not been reviewed by the task force. As for the issue of monthly payments to quarterly or some other period, we can put that on down as something that we will discuss in the next time around. As for freezing payments in the case of an RPS freeze, we see this as a serious matter that goes to the structure of the contracts that we've developed over the last 5 years. From business school, I know that if you change the risk proposition in a contract, you change the value of that contract. And as I've said, the auction structure has been designed to discuss all of the issues before heading to a final vote. We would not support changing this provision in the contract for this auction. In general, DENREC believes that the process and practice of the task force established over the last 5 years should offer confidence to all parties that their issues will be given due consideration. And the auction that we are proposing here today is evidence of that, because as you have heard, we have taken the issues raised by the Commission and incorporated them into this proposal.
Have you read the brief filed by staff?
Yes, and we don't take issue with any of staff's comments.
Could you summarize your testimony here today?
Task Force has crafted a procurement that supports a stable market for systems of all sizes, provides flexibility to Delmarva Power, and opens the auction to utility scale systems. The proposal builds on the experience of the last 5 years and incorporates the Commission's concerns in a way that should continue to promote a stable SREC market going forward. DENREC recommends approval of the 2017 SREC program as consistent with REPSA, just, reasonable, and in the public interest.
And does that conclude your testimony today, Tom?
Yes, it does.
And Mr. Noyes is available for cross-examination.
Ms. Scott, any questions?
No questions.
Ms. Iori?
I have a couple. Good morning, good afternoon, Mr. Noyes. Does the task force have any meetings scheduled going forward?
No.
Okay.
Generally speaking, we will schedule a meeting after the auction, should it be approved, review those results, and move forward from there.
Thank you. And you said you disagree with the DPA's suggestion that a provision be added to the contract regarding if a freeze is declared. If no freeze, or if there is no such provision, isn't a freeze worthless?
No,
Why not?
because the RPS increases every year between now and 2025. A freeze would basically be a freeze of future purchases to meet the increasing RPS requirement over the future years.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Mr. Willard, any questions?
No questions, Your Honor.
Commissioners, any questions of the parties? Commissioner Drexler.
I have a question for Ms. Scott. In your opinion, does the risk profile of the contract change if you were to change the monthly payment obligations for SRECs under $35, 35 and under, as a freeze would change? Would there be concerns, consequences of bidders, bidding numbers?
I mean, if we change to a different amount
For this, yeah, for the
11 for
Or
years
would the
11 to-
administrative cost increase because you're doing, costs
managing for smaller, you're doing cost manager for larger, and some are semi-annual and some are monthly? Or is it not as much of an issue as the freeze?
Do you mind if I answer that question?
Yes, please.
Sure. So I think the issue of changing the payment structure is not a tremendous risk issue. Since it hasn't been brought up, it'd be interesting to find out what the solar developers think about that change. We would then do an analysis of if there are cost savings. We would identify the cost savings toward it. So of all the kind of issues on the table, whether we do monthly or quarterly is probably not overly significant and may save some money in the committee. If I was, would certainly take a look at that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Drag?
Yeah, thank you. I'm struggling a little bit to decide and determine whether the commission is sitting in a position where we're being asked to referee what happens in the task force. But I don't know whether that's our standing authority or whether it resides, for example, with DENREC. If someone in the room has a perspective on that, it would be helpful for me to figure out where I am in these issues, amidst these issues.
I'll jump in.
Okay.
You know I'm not shy.
I understand.
Under the statute, the task force is required to bring this program, the procurement program, to you, the commission. So in the DPA's view, you, the commission, has the authority and the ability to tell the task force what you think is important, what should be considered, what it should do. You did that last year in your order where you strongly encouraged the task force to consider the cost controlling measures that the DPA had suggested. That is, with the exception of the change to the contract in the event of a freeze, that is what the DPA is asking you to do today with respect to the issues that the DPA raised in its comments.
Okay.
And I think that the fact that DENREC is here and DP&L is here and staff and the DPA informing us of the issues involved with this task force and the program is pretty much evidence that there's no one's objecting to the commission making these decisions.
Right.
And so far they haven't. And also, I think that the comments that I liked, some of the comments in DPA seem to be very logical, and of course the response on the freezing issue seemed to be a logical one as well. But generally speaking, the commission last year respects and wants, and I think really would like to have the input of the committee after the task force, after the task force has examined all the issues thoroughly and asked all the questions like Mr. Noy has referred to. So generally speaking, it's difficult to make a decision right here at this table on something that hasn't been thoroughly vetted by the task force, even if it does seem like it's a fairly logical thing to do, because sometimes there's just unintended consequences. And I'm not a solar expert, and there are a lot of solar experts on that task force whose thoughts and opinions I'd like to have before I would make some of the requested changes.
So, Mr. Chair, following up on that comment, then, my question would be, who sets the agenda before the task force sits at the table?
Well, I think it's just like I keep on speaking for a little bit. We can give them, like as I already said, initially say, look, so if you've got something on this list, I mean, already I would, frankly, I think that the committee, the task force operates in good faith. Mr. Moore, Mr. Noy, as they hear the comments that are made by DPA and others, Mr. Stevenson, for example, and from my experience, it seems that they follow through and actually give thoughtful consideration of the issues raised, and then come with their opinion on with respect to those issues. But I just assume that's going to happen again this coming year. But if this commission decides it wants to make some, overt or set forth a position here with respect to the issues raised, that would certainly be appropriate as well.
So, I guess I would agree, Mr. Chair. I would much rather that the task force has looked at these issues and brought to us what I would say is an informed recommendation on each one, as opposed to coming in and saying these are issues that one party on the task force doesn't feel have been fully vetted. That would be my preference, because I think I get closer to one side or the other of a given argument with the appropriate amount of information. One last question, Mr. Chair. Is the concept of a freeze defined in the statute as for the future only or as for all? Does the statute clarify what the definition of a freeze means? As it forward-looking, or is it for all?
Mr. Noyes, you want to answer that question? I know Ms. Iori has an answer.
Moses volunteered, but I would take anyone's perspective on it. To the best of my recollection, it freezes the compliance requirement at the amount of the compliance year for which the freeze is instituted. So by the best of my understanding, that would mean that it would freeze the annual increase of the requirements of the RPS, but Delmarva would still be required to procure the amount of SRECs associated with the percentage of that year. So for instance, if this year it's 13 and next year it's 14 and it was frozen for that next year, Delmarva would still have to procure annually the 13% RPS moving forward. And anyone can correct that.
That's correct.
Can I add to that,
Sure.
Commissioner, if you don't mind? One of the things I have to be careful, because this is a marketplace thing. We are not near fully hedged on solar RECs. We still buy probably close to 50% of our RECs, which are tens of thousands of RECs on the spot market. So even if you were to run the auction, buy fully 20,000 RECs because we got good pricing, we would be nowhere near the 2017 commitment in contracted RECs. So I think that's important to note. If we were right on the edge of, are we going to be over? We are not. We still buy significant amounts of RECs on the spot market, so we would be in no risk of over-procuring if indeed there was a freeze put on year 17.
I can add a little more context to that. In their last compliance report, Delmarva procured over 50% of the total SRECs required from the spot market, even though they participated in the 2016 procurement program fully.
Correct.
Thank you. No further questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Any other questions? Does anybody feel like stating a motion? I move that the application be approved.
Move we adopt order number 9050 as presented.
I second it.
Is there any discussion on the motion to approve the order? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Chair, thanks. I was going to ask you when prepared statements to testify.
Ms. Iori, Mr. Willard, Ms. Scott, if you have any prepared statements that they spoke from, could you give them to the court reporter so that she'll have an easy way of making sure she gets all the words correctly. You know, Ms. Scott?
Yes. Joe? Director comments.
Mr. Noyes, are you here to make any comments in addition to what you've already talked
This is
about?
from DPA.
Right. She'll know. She knows.
Okay,
1, 2,
thank
3,
you.
4, 5 problems.
Is there anyone here from the public
Thank
that
you,
wishes to
thank
make
you.
comment to the Public Service Commission? Mr. Howard?
Chairman Winslow, Commissioners, good afternoon. First, I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate Mr. Moore on his 32 wonderful years with Delmarva Power. After my 32 years with wonderful Delmarva Power, I find myself at the Delaware Public Service Commission. I just wanted Mr. Moore to know about the career progression path that he'll be entering into.
I'm sure Ms. Scott will tell.
Yes, I make sure I will.
For the youngsters here at our commission office, if I take you back to 2005, it was the height of the energy supply crisis. mostly a pricing crisis in 2005, 2006. At that point, the Commission approved a process by which Delmarva Power would provide standard offer service to all of its customers. The Commission further tweaked that process a little bit in 2006, but stayed largely the same as to how Delmarva would secure SOS for the past 11 years. I've asked Ms. Knotts to come forward and talk to you with some possible potential further tweaking that you may want to consider at some point. Ms. Knotts?
Thank you.
At some
Good
point,
afternoon.
but not today?
Not today, sir.
Good afternoon, Chairman Winslow and Commissioners. Actually, I'd like to gather some feedback from you as far as the presentation and the process that we use for the review of Delmarva's standard offer service tranches that, as you'll recall, occurs in December and February each year. And in the past, recent past, Liberty Consulting Group, who is the Commission's technical monitoring consultant, reviews with you in a public forum the market conditions, the competitiveness of the auctions, and then an executive session, the actual bid prices, the winning bids, and the bidders. The Commission then votes to approve or disapprove the bids. Typically, that's on the Thursday after the tranche that occurs on Monday. The Commission, as Mr. Howell was talking about, the Commission actually adopted this formal process approximately 12 years ago to provide a level of transparency. And to date, the Commission has approved all of the transactions for the SOS tranches. In a document titled Delmarva Power and Light Company's Request for Proposals for Full Requirements Wholesale Electric Power Supply in Delaware, which is their RFP for their wholesale suppliers. And this comes before the Commission each September, typically, for the Commission to approve this document and any kind of subsequent changes to it. In the section 9.8, which is titled Regulatory Approvals, it states, and I quote, "The executed transactions will be contingent upon the Delaware Public Service Commission and any necessary FERC approvals. The transactions will be deemed approved by the Delaware Commission unless the Commission orders otherwise within the 2 days following the execution of the transactions. Bidder agrees to cooperate to the fullest extent necessary to obtain any and all state, federal, or other regulatory approvals of the full service agreement and transactions resulting from the proposals." I've asked PHI to tell me what some of their other jurisdictions are doing in this regard. I'd like to just share that with you. In New Jersey, the Commission holds a public hearing, and the Commission votes to approve or to not approve the bids. In D.C., there is no public hearing. The Commission reviews the results, and staff notifies the utility that they took no action since they are deemed approved. In Maryland, the Commission holds a public hearing. The Commission does not vote, but they issue an order that they took no action. So I have just a couple questions for the Commission, if you would like to give me some feedback on this. Does the Commission want to continue to have public hearing on the results of the tranches as we have on that Thursday? Typically, it's the Thursday after Thanksgiving. And in February that we have where Mr. Ledzelder comes and reviews with you. Are you finding that valuable? And does the Commission want to vote on the results of the tranches, knowing that the transactions are deemed approved by the Commission unless the Commission orders otherwise within the 2 days following the execution of the transactions? So any feedback that you have on this?
What is 2 days within the execution of the agreements? Explain that a little more.
Yes, the auctions occur on a Monday. The actual bids, the transactions are actually executed on Wednesday. The 2 days would allow you to have until Friday. Now, typically, because of scheduling and past precedents, we've had our Commission meetings on Thursday, which allows an extra day. But if there was an issue, we could go to Friday.
Mr. Chair, question. So if we did not have the public hearings and the presentation from our representative, how would it, what would be in place? How would it then be administered?
Well, let me
And
see if I'm addressing this correctly.
So without a public hearing, then the representative for the commission would not need to travel here and make that presentation in the commission's setting. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And so what would happen instead of that is the first question. The second part of that question is there any substantial cost savings to the commission?
There would be some cost savings to the commission. Of course, as you pointed out, time and travel and everything to the commission. Now, typically, the technical monitoring consultant is already in Baltimore for the actual tranche that occurs on Monday. So the traveling would be and the time would be from Baltimore to Dover here, not from wherever they're home, wherever they're residing to here. So it would be minimum. Typically, he just drives over and things like that. So that's not a major consequence. We could just, have a paper that we hand out, with market conditions, a memo that you could read that you would know the market conditions. Surely staff knows the confidential part of the bids and things like that we could share in executive session. We may not have the expertise of answering some of the more in-depth market questions that you might have. That's one way we could do it.
My opinion, Mr. Chair, if I can render, is that I think that the way it's done now, if you say that the cost factor is inconsequential, I rather enjoy having the representative here for any questions.
Commissioner Drexler?
I concur.
Commissioner Conaway?
In the interest of transparency, I would prefer the public hearings, but I have no problem with the take no action procedure also.
I would prefer the public hearing as well, only because of transparency and also being a government body, as much open as we are, will lend us to a more credibility. Even though there is little cost involved and time crunch is there, I think that cost and the time crunch is well worth it.
Okay. So I hear one comment on the voting process. Does any of the other commissioners have any feedback on the voting process?
I rather prefer the voting piece. It may not be clear on the agenda for that given day whether some commissioners are not here or whether we have a quorum. So I prefer the voting aspect remain.
Okay.
My only thought on it is that it's the one opportunity we have to ask how things are going, are there improvements we can make, good input from staff and other people. And I'm not sure, as pointed out by you, we haven't made too many changes over the years, so I'm not sure how important that is. But we did make one significant change, which I think improved things a lot, which is the method of the auction. We've been lucky, very lucky over the last number of years with the descending line with respect to the commodity price. If that reverses and goes up, then we have even more reason to be here in person to listen to what happened in the auction. I just don't feel strongly enough about any change at this point in time.
Okay.
It's not a big burden on us. Is it a big burden on staff? I wouldn't think so.
No. I will be here no matter what.
You don't have your 32 years in.
No, not yet. Well, then I just have a final question, actually two. But concerning the presentation, is the way that we're presenting the materials and the depth of the materials, is that satisfactory to the commissioners? Would you like to see a different presentation method, more in depth of the materials or anything like that we could maybe change this to, evolve over time for you that would be more helpful?
No. I would say this, though, and that is that I'm sitting here, as you asked the question thinking about the presentations, and of course I think I remember exactly how they go. This might not be a bad discussion for us to have just before the next auction.
Okay.
So we sort of focus as commissioners on what we're hearing and what we're not hearing, or what we might want additional, or whether or not we should go to the not voting, it passes if we don't, a different way to do it. It might be better if it's closer in time that we actually listen to it and afterwards have a post-auction meeting and put that on the agenda and then talk about this.
Okay.
More effective.
I'll make a note to follow up. Also in your package, I took the liberty of including a request for the contract renewal for Liberty Consulting Group if there was no changes that you wanted to make to the presentation and the process that we're using. And I'd like to ask if the Commission would be favorable in approving that one-year contract extension to the Liberty Consulting Group as allowed in their contract that they signed last year. We did an RFP last year. And this is for an amount not to exceed $50,000 for the 2017-2018 SOS procurement year.
Well, I think it's a bargain. They do good work for us, it seems to me, and it's a very important job, and they're not asking for an increase, so I'm supportive of the staff's request.
And I second.
I agree with that.
So I think it's pretty unanimous that we think that you should give them another year.
Okay.
Agreed.
Very good. I will relay that information to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Knotts. I appreciate you taking the punches for that particular topic. Commissioners, as you're aware, we have continued to express our concerns with respect to the artificial island and the cost allocation associated with that. We continue to look for more just and reasonable approaches to cost allocation that's roughly commensurate with benefits. Mr. Farber and Mr. DeLosa have been reviewing the proposed new PJM process, and I believe Mr. DeLosa has a recommendation that he would like to share with the Commission today. Mr. DeLosa.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners. Chairman, I'm especially happy you're still with us because it's your signature on the bottom.
I saw what was on the agenda, and I decided this is more important.
Thank you, sir. So today I'm before you with a proposed letter seeking your ratification approval to Steve Herling, who is the Vice President for Planning. Herling, Herling, VP of Planning for PJM. This letter also, you'll note, has a CC to Mr. Howard Schneider, who is the Chairman of the PJM Board, and therefore this letter will be posted publicly and distributed to PJM's membership. So first, staff would like to thank the PJM Board for the recognition in Andy Ott's April 6th, 17 letter that, quote, application of the DFACS methodology can result in cost allocations that seem anomalous in cases where the engineering rationale or need for the particular project is not one driven by power flows, end quote. Additionally, staff would like to thank the PJM Board for subsequently directing additional analysis of project beneficiaries. PJM explained this new analysis to the FERC in its new RTEP cost allocation filing, which includes artificial island, by stating, this is from PJM's initial filing in docket ER 17-1420, quote, because of the ongoing debate surrounding this particular project, which threatens to impede PJM's ability to discharge its reliability responsibilities, PJM is analyzing project beneficiaries from alternate perspectives, including load and the extent of service interruption that could be expected in the case of an uncontrolled stability event at Artificial Island. PJM anticipates to make such alternative analysis publicly available shortly. However, as the proposed letter before you today notes, it is not clear from the board approval letter whether the results of PJM's pending review will continue to rely solely on power flows, as the DFACS cost allocation methodology does. Staff's concern in this regard is if PJM's pending review continues to rely only on power flows, while the need for the project is not based on power flows. As a result, staff and aligned parties are requesting additional analysis from PJM in order to better understand and potentially apply the outcome of PJM's review in the development of a new cost allocation methodology. This information will provide context for the Delaware PSC staff and aligned parties for the evaluation of a potentially new cost allocation methodology. Specifically, the information staff is requesting is regarding economic benefits in the form of locational marginal price and load payments for different operating scenarios that may occur at the artificial island generating complex. Specifically, different generation outputs of the AI units at times when certain transmission lines may be out of service, a multiple unit trip of the artificial island nuclear generation requiring PJM emergency procedures and the effects of such a scenario, and reduction of generation output consistent with the application of the Artificial Island Operating Guide over the last 5 years. As you'll recall, the artificial island right now has a fairly extensive guide which governs its operations, and this last data request is staff's attempt to understand what the economic effects would be in real-world operating scenarios under the Artificial Island Operating Guide. So, to conclude, to the extent that PJM's newly provided information continues to identify only flow-based beneficiaries, this information will allow the development of a cost allocation alternative that will including non-flow-based beneficiaries of the Artificial Island project. And as a last note, I would just like to thank our joint signatories, the DPA, Old Dominion Electric Cooperative, and Easton Utilities of Easton, Maryland. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions, Commissioner?
Yes, I have one. So I see two letters from our chairman and from Mr. Slater. And if I'm PJM receiving both of these letters, one of them is addressing and I know that you brought only one here, but Mr. Slater, you wrote a letter to the board of PJM, and I think you were emphasizing in that letter that they support us in going back for asking FERC to take another look on the allocation. And our letter is kind of asking them to do an analysis around the allocation and the project. If I'm PJM, do we want them to do both? And if not, which is their path of least resistance, and are they bound ultimately to go one lane or the other?
So, I'll jump in first, and then I'll let Drew ask. To the best of my understanding, those letters would have been sent in sequence. I'm not aware of any recent letter from the public advocate, but as recently as early April this month, the PJM board has made a decision regarding the which project, the selection of the project, and therefore they remained with their previous choice of the LS Power project, and as a result of that selection, and then PJM's board willingness to produce another analysis, this is a subsequent follow-up, which would be the Commission and the DPA signing on to this letter requesting this analysis. Now, that's the best of my understanding. I would defer to the
What does
public
it mean
advocate.
for the request that they help us at FERC?
Yeah, so I appreciate the question. There were many parties that asked for them to support us at FERC, including the General Assembly. The board has decided not necessarily to go that route, but to do the data analysis, which may be significant.
That kind of clarifies it, because I was just curious whether they're going to dump one of these requests in deference to the other.
Yeah, our letter was before there.
Yeah.
Okay. I got it. Thank you. No further questions.
At the OPSI meeting, not too long ago, several PJM speakers indicated that they're not a policy-making body. They operate by a tariff, and they can't really side on Delaware's side because of that situation. Having said that, however, they have obviously put some ammunition on the table, so to speak, and have the power to ask that their stakeholders reconsider or consider additional information. And also, this is something that's still in process, so these letters are going to go out, and if we don't like what happens as part of the process, I'm sure we're going to write another letter. So it's very important that Delaware be successful in this battle. I can't think of anything important right now than making sure that the benefits and the costs are aligned much more fairly. So whatever effort we can make, we have to make.
I think we would just be looking for a vote of approval or ratification at this time, if the commission so chooses.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioner.
Nice sort of change of pace, have you here? Who's that other guy?
Chairman Winslow, I'll be happy to pass your comments along to that other guy. And lastly, I guess our next commission meeting is on Tuesday, May the 9th, starting at 1 p.m. here in Dover.
Thank you all very much for attending. Have a good day. We're adjourned.